I want to introduce you to a great senator, Tom Cotton. By the way, Tom Cotton, you were the first senator, really the first person that I know of, to be waving the flag, say, hey, China, hey, this virus, hey, this is a big issue. You even did this before the medical experts, the scientific experts in this country were waving flags. January 22nd, you sent a letter to the Secretary of HHS, and you warned him about this problem and said he needed to look into it. On January 26th, Dr. Fauci, who I have great respect for, in a podcast interview said that this virus probably will be something like a bad flu, that the public doesn't need to worry. Well, obviously, we're very, very worried now. Senator Cotton, best-selling New York Times author, Sacred Duty. Here's my question to you, sir. How did you know so early, really before almost any other public figure, that we were in for a problem with respect to China?
Mark, thanks for having me on again. I knew early on, probably the second weekend of January, that something was happening in central China, just looking at the publicly available sources from China and East Asia. And then by that third weekend, by the first weekend of the impeachment trial, it was clear to me that action was called for. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor, I'm not an expert in epidemiology, but I do have common sense and two eyes, and I could see the contrast between two things from Beijing. On the one hand, the lies of the Chinese Communist Party, telling the world that they had things under control, that this virus probably couldn't be transmitted between humans, that it would be nothing more than a bad flu. And on the other hand, the extreme drastic measures they had taken, like closing schools nationwide, or literally welding the doors shut on high-rise apartments in Wuhan, or Hong Kong shutting down air travel from the mainland. The contrast between Beijing's words on one hand and their actions on the other hand told me from the very beginning that this virus was much more dangerous, much more contagious than Beijing was letting on, and then it was time to start ringing the alarm here in the United States and around the world.
When you began ringing the alarms here in the United States, were many of your colleagues in Congress paying attention? It's a serious question because I don't remember many of them paying attention at all.
Mark, unfortunately, when I began to ring that alarm in January, the Senate was paralyzed with the partisan impeachment trial of the president. We literally could not get on the Senate floor to give a speech. So I think the first public remarks I gave about this virus was in the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing late in January on an unrelated topic. Now, I did have many private conversations with Republican senators who had seen some headlines but hadn't really dove deep into the issue. Once I spoke with them, many of them began to share my concerns. Some of them spoke to the administration as well to support my efforts to get the president to ground travel from China in late January, as he thankfully did. But there's no doubt that the partisan impeachment trial that paralyzed the Senate for 3 weeks impeded the early efforts to sound the alarm for the American people out of the Senate.
You know, Senator, I've been tracking as carefully as I can because I'm a public voice, so I need to do these things. The scholarship on this virus, the various models that are publicly available. I've been listening to Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. And I have to say, I'm getting a little bit of whiplash here. The data changes, and so the model changes, and so the analyses change, and so forth and so on. But one of the things that concerns me is this constant use of China's data. They're lying. They cover this up. Their figures make no sense. It's a massive country, and they pretend they had a few thousand deaths. And don't we know from intelligence services today that that's simply not true? So why are we modeling, or others modeling, based on China's data figures?
So, Mark, first off, there's no doubt that China is still lying. Just as we saw in January, their words and their actions don't match. That's still the case today. China claims that they have this virus totally under control. Yet just last weekend, they shut down all movie theaters once again, just a week after having opened them up. A country that has a pandemic under control doesn't shut down all of its movie theaters nationwide. Or just look in Wuhan, where a single mortuary ordered more urns than the Chinese Communist Party admit have died nationwide. the words simply do not match up to the facts that we can see. That's one reason why Dr. Birx said last week that the data coming out of China caused much of the world to underreact and be less prepared than we might have been, because the data they presented simply does not comport with the reality that we now see in places like Italy and Spain, and unfortunately in New York City, because that's where the rubber meets the road. You know, there are a lot of unknowns about this virus in terms of when it becomes infectious, how long it remains infectious while asymptomatic, what the mortality rate ultimately will be. But here's the bottom line. They don't have to deploy the mercy and the comfort. They don't have to build hospitals in Central Park or the Javits Center for the seasonal flu. That tells us all we need to know about just how lethal this pandemic is, and that China is responsible for unleashing it on the world.
I'm just concerned, Senator, about some of our institutions. Congress, in my view, you don't have to agree with me, failed us. They were so obsessed with taking out the President of the United States. The intelligence committees and other relevant committees really were not doing their jobs, particularly in the House of Representatives. The initial reaction, quite frankly, from our experts at the CDC and others was not as robust as it could have been. And now I want to ask you about the media. When you first started to raise these issues about China, mid-January and so forth, tell me, were CNN and MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, CBS, were any of them beating down your door to try and figure out why you were so concerned about what was going on in China?
No, Mark. And on the contrary, most of those mainstream media sources were spouting Chinese Communist Party propaganda. In fact, some of them, like the Washington Post and the New York Times, actually run official Chinese Communist propaganda in their pages for massive fees. If anything, the mainstream media was more sensitive to offending the delegate sensibilities of Chairman Xi and his Communist Party apparatchiks by pointing out that this virus in fact originated in Wuhan, and that China was responsible through their deceit and their corruption for unleashing it on the world.
Let me ask you a question. Just because, you know, you're a senator, you have to be involved in decision making. Not that you're an expert on this illness, very few people are, since we never heard of it before. I'm just trying to figure out the logic of some of this. We shut down significant parts of the economy. By the way, the president hasn't shut it down. Governors do, mayors do. They are the decision makers and so forth. And then two questions to you. Number one, then at some point we're going to open it up. If everybody, or pretty much, except for so-called essential human beings, are staying home, they don't get the virus, they don't become immune to the virus, and then at some given date, slowly or quickly, people are allowed to socialize again and they go public again. I don't quite understand how we're going to prevent the virus from not kicking in again when we have people who've never had the virus in touch with people who have had the virus. And therefore, it seems to me, we're going to be going through something like this again, potentially. Where am I wrong on that? I'm just trying to think this through.
No, Mark, that's a real risk to have a resurgence of the virus. Hong Kong and Singapore were some of the world leaders in getting it under control. Now, of course, those are more like cities than a continental nation like ours, but they've unfortunately had a second wave of the virus hit. So when we do get the economy up and moving again, when we get people back on our feet, it's going to be after we have protected our hospitals and our healthcare system, so we don't have the kind of scenes you see in Italy all around the country of people dying from overwhelmed hospitals, not just from coronavirus, but heart attacks or strokes or the other reasons people go to the hospital and need intensive care. There needs to be widespread and rapid testing, almost like, say, a home pregnancy test, so people know if they have the virus. Antibody testing will be an important part as well, so people know if they have had the virus, because right now Dr. Fauci has said that the best working assumption is that people will be immune from this virus, at least this strain, once they have had it. That will all have to be integrated into the workplace. Workplaces will have to make sure that they are screening their employees, say taking temperature as they do in South Korean workplaces today, that we have active and aggressive measures to quarantine individuals with the virus and then trace the contacts they've had in recent times. Once we have had the time to build up those kind of capabilities, those kinds of skills at the state and local level, what you see in South Korea, then we can begin to get the economy back on its feet and get people back to working, and we can move away from where we are now with population-based measures where we essentially tell everyone it's best to stay home if you can, and move into individual case-based measures. That'll be the kind of standard working model until we have effective therapeutic drugs that can suppress the symptoms of the virus, and then ultimately a vaccine that can help us control its outbreak in the future.
I have a second question for you, as I said when we come back, related to our economic decisions, if they make much sense. Now, we'll be right back with Senator Tom Cotton.
AT&T has connected us every day for over 100 years. And we're here for you, especially now, doing everything possible to keep you connected. Through the resilience of our network and people, we can keep learning, keep sharing, keep watching, and most of all, keep together. It's the job we've always done. It is the job we will always do.
You ever wish you weren't a motor?
Sure. Sometimes I wish I had legs like you.
Yeah, is it like a regular person?
No. Still have bike half man. Just the opposite.
What's the legs on the bottom and motorcycle on the top? Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
For those who were born to ride, there's Progressive.
You try to stay ahead of the mess, but scrubbing still takes time. Now there's new Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. It's the faster way to clean as you go. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. It cleans grease 5 times faster. New Dawn Power Wash. Spray, wipe, rinse.
All right, let's do it.
Staying home? There's never been a better time to stock up on Omaha Steaks. Announcing the Omaha Steaks Stock Up Sale. For a limited time, get naturally aged, hand-cut, grain-fed Omaha steaks shipped free right to your doorstep. Plus all your favorites, from burgers, chicken, and pork to sides and desserts. In stock and ready to ship. All 100% money-back guaranteed. All without leaving home. Shop our Stock Up Sale. Plus get free shipping when you shop omahasteaks.com/TV.
You should be mad at leaf blowers. You should be mad your neighbor always wants to hang out. And you should be mad your smart fridge is unnecessarily complicated. Making ice. But you're not mad because you have E-Trade, which isn't complicated. Their tools make trading quicker and simpler so you can take on the markets with confidence. Don't get mad. Get E-Trade and start trading commission-free today.
Fighting a pandemic as a nation.
We are proving that no darkness can overshadow the eternal light of American courage.
For the latest updates on how you can help, stay with Fox News.
When you take a statin drug to reduce cholesterol, it can also deplete your CoQ10 levels. I recommend Cunol CoQ10 to help restore this important heart health nutrient. Cunol is the brand I recommend considering along with your statin medication. One of my favorite supplements is Cunol Turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Unlike regular turmeric supplements, Cunol's superior absorption helps me get the full benefits of turmeric. Cunol is the turmeric brand I trust.
I never had time for breakfast until I found Daily Harvest. It's clean food built on organic fruits and vegetables that's ready in minutes with zero prep work. Get started today at dailyharvest.com.
I see what's possible instead of what's here. Others see cracked concrete, run-down courts. I see a way to bring pride back to communities. That's why I made Project Backboard and a site with GoDaddy. How will you make your mark? Make the world you want.
Senator Tom Cotton, you have a knack for being right, certainly from my perspective. You're the only senator to vote against the Iran deal, which is really quite remarkable. But I want to swing back to this economic issue, and it's upsetting my callers and my listeners on radio, of which there are millions. They don't want inflation. They don't think it's fair that the government is now talking, the administration and Congress, of spending trillions more on so-called infrastructure projects, bridges, tunnels, expanding airports where we're not flying planes, roads where we're not supposed to be driving. People say this can go on to the end of the summer. You got waiters losing their jobs, restaurateurs going out of business. I can go on and on and on and on. They go, wait a minute. You're going to now say you're creating government jobs when you're shutting down our businesses and our jobs, the governors or mayors are. Number one, that makes no sense. And number two, where's all this money coming from? How do we know there won't be massive inflation, all these dollars chasing an economy and products that are going to be not just flatlined, but reduced? How do I answer them, Senator?
So, Mark, I hear those concerns and I understand them. It's important to know that in the legislation Congress passed a couple weeks ago, that we drew the line in the Senate at Nancy Pelosi's ideological wish list. She had all kinds of crazy items in there, like forcing airlines to be carbon neutral in a few years, although I bet it didn't apply to Nancy Pelosi's private plane, or adopting race and sex quotas for publicly traded companies. On and on you could go, but we drew the line at making sure that families and small businesses and other businesses that have been affected by this virus were getting the immediate relief they need. So I wouldn't call this legislation a stimulus, as sometimes it is. I'd say that this is more about survival. This is about helping get our workers and their families and our businesses through the most intense period of this crisis. Sadly, last week we just had another 6.6 million people lose their job. That's 10 million in 2 weeks. That is a historic number, far beyond anything we've ever seen. And the vast majority of those workers and their businesses were thriving and strong just 5 or 6 weeks ago. That's why our legislation focused on getting money into the hands of families who are struggling to make ends meet, to put food on the table for their kids and keep a roof over their head, and our businesses to help keep their employees on payroll for a few weeks so we can get through the worst of this crisis. Now, I know Nancy Pelosi is already speaking about new legislation, and she's speaking, as you said, about trillions of new dollars spent on infrastructure, even though I'm not sure what that has to do with stopping the spread of this virus. But I can tell you the reason she's doing that is because she didn't get her wish list the last time around, and if I have anything to do about it, she won't get her wish list the next time around either.
Yeah, and I can just tell you, if Republicans go along, let's pretend it's a clean bill on infrastructure. Let's pretend it's for $2 trillion, as the president says. I think if Congress passes something like that, you're going to see a pushback now. And I think the reason is people are hurting, and there's no time to be building roads and highways and something 2, 3 years, 4 years hence, when people say, now, wait a minute, you're telling me to stay in my house with my toilet paper, to be a good citizen. I'm being a good citizen. I've lost my business. I've lost my job. And now over here on the other side, now you're saying, but we need to pump the prime and prime the pump and create all these infrastructure jobs over here. In other words, it's incoherent. And in addition to that, nobody can tell me where this money's coming from because it's coming from no place. And the one concern I have about that last bill, Senator, is, and this has been written about by some scholars too, and it's true, the Federal Reserve now has the authority to make $4.5 trillion worth of loans. And what that means, if that isn't done properly, is that the Federal Reserve will control 100% of the private capital market. 100%. I'm just hoping that the Treasury Secretary who came up with this idea and other people who came up with this idea understand what's taking place here. Again, I have a number of people contacting me in the private capital business saying, okay, I'm out of business. I'm going to fire all my employees because I don't get to make these decisions anymore. The Federal Reserve is going to make these decisions. Do you think Congress generally, certainly if they take another spending bill and take a next step, really needs to slow down and make sure they're not going to do more damage than good to the economy now and in the future?
I think our focus should be right now on trying to make sure that we implement the last bill, which is, again, about getting aid in the hands of distressed families and business as well. As far as ownership by the Federal Reserve or the Treasury goes, one reason why we put so much money into the Exchange Stabilization Fund to allow the Federal Reserve to help support financial markets is on the hope and expectation that it wouldn't be necessary, that strong and healthy companies who may just be having trouble predicting payroll or other cash flows in the future will be competent, there'll be a backstop to our financial markets. And then finally, as far as ownership of companies goes, I think that the taxpayer should get the benefit of the upside. So, for instance, take the airlines. They have essentially been shut down. They'll come back. Our country needs airlines. Their stock is going to rebound. When that happens, the taxpayer who is lending this money to the airlines should benefit from it. Now, I don't think the Department of Treasury or the Federal Reserve, either under this administration or any future one, should be able to vote their stock at annual shareholder meetings. That's why we've said they should get preferred stock or warrants, things that give the taxpayer the benefit of the upside, but keep government from imposing political preferences on private businesses.
Yeah, I agree. One of my great concerns here is you hear some people talking about this is another great opportunity for a New Deal, go big. And I'm thinking to myself, actually, this has nothing to do with a New Deal or going big. This is a totally different situation, and we shouldn't lose our minds and adopt really insane economic policies, spending. I don't care if it's zero interest on money spent by the government. The fact is, you're printing this money and you're pushing it out, that is the Federal Reserve, into the economy, and we know what happens to societies when currency is devalued, pensions are devalued, paychecks are devalued, companies are devalued, and it is enormously difficult to put the inflation danger back in the box. We'll be right back.
You wouldn't accept an incomplete job from anyone else, so why accept it from your allergy pills? Flonase relieves your worst symptoms, which most pills don't. Get all-in-one allergy relief for 24 hours with Flonase.
The ADT yard sign stands watch over your home and family with tested, trusted 24/7 protection. Now get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring starting at just $28.99 a month, about $1 a day. Call 1-800-ADT-ASAP.
Are you tired of using towels you think are going to be amazing, but don't actually dry you? They just push water around on your skin.
Other towels seem to smear the water on your skin because of the coatings.
After I dry off, my skin is still wet.
You deserve a better towel. Introducing MyPillow Towels, the first towel that is guaranteed to dry you faster.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. I've created the best towel ever where it actually feels soft but dries us. What a concept.
The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now. When you use the promo code on your screen, Mike will include a second full towel set absolutely free. That's 2 MyPillow towel sets for the price of 1.
Watch this demonstration. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. Watch this absorbency test. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. I mean, this is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work.
With the MyPillow towel, the first time I used it, I couldn't believe how quick my hair was dry.
I really love the towels. They're really great. They're super absorbent.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now. The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work. And listen to this. Use the promo code on your screen and Mike will include a second full towel set with bath towel, hand towel, and washcloth absolutely free. That's 2 MyPillow towel sets for the price of 1 in your choice of color.
I personally guarantee they're going to be the best towels you'll ever own.
Order now.
Welcome to Unlimited by Green Dot, a new kind of mobile bank account designed to make it easy to manage your money and save. With an incredible 3% interest on your savings, that's 30 times higher than the national average, up to a $10,000 balance. So your savings will grow faster. And when you shop online, you get unlimited 3% cash back from places like Amazon, Uber, and Walmart.com. Open an account today at greendot.com. Green Dot, banking and saving made simple.
So I had to quit college to help my mom, but I never wanted to quit my dream of a career in IT.
There are 200,000 unfilled IT support roles in America. On Coursera, you can earn Google's IT Support Professional Certificate designed to prepare you for an IT support career in about 5 months for $49 a month. No degree or experience needed.
My job now is amazing. I can spend more time with my family.
Find courses, certificates, and degrees on Coursera. Join for free at Coursera.org. Coursera, your course to success.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. The death toll here in the U.S. from the coronavirus pandemic is nearing the 10,000 mark. Despite that grim figure, President Trump remains somewhat optimistic, telling reporters during a White House briefing this evening he sees a light at the end of the tunnel. There are more than 335,000 confirmed victims here in the U.S., the most of any country in the world. Meanwhile, a glimmer of hope in New York. The number of counted deaths today were fewer than Saturday, but Governor Andrew Cuomo cautions New Yorkers to remain vigilant. Meanwhile, Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson underwent testing today for the coronavirus. Johnson first showed symptoms 10 days ago and has been in quarantine at the Prime Minister's residence at number 10 Downing Street since then. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Life, Liberty, and Levin for all of your headlines. Log on to foxnews.com.
Senator Tom Cotton, you've been through a lot in your life. You served in the military during some very, very difficult times. And I think the American people, and I think the president has been doing this every day at his press conferences too, maybe they need to hear something a little bit positive, that the world is not going to come to an end as we know it, that we have these challenges from time to time as a society and as individuals. What would you like to say to the American people?
Mark, there's so many great stories from across our country. Just look in my little corner of the world. I have heard from so many business owners who decided to keep workers on payroll even though they didn't have revenue coming in, or landlords who own buildings where you had restaurants and told the restaurant owners, you know what, you can skip this month's lease, go ahead and pay your workers, or farmers in farm country in Arkansas who may not be ready to plant their fields yet, so they go down the road and help their friends plant their field, and they know that they'll get that favor returned. Or some of the teenagers who have been let out of school who are helping collect and deliver groceries for elderly Arkansans so they don't expose themselves to the risk of going out to shop for themselves. And you can just multiply those stories 50-fold across every state of our great union, and you'd see the true spirit of Americans coming through. And these terrible times, again, 10 million people have lost their jobs, so many businesses have had to close their doors, but at the same time, Americans are pulling together with a single fighting spirit to help overcome this terrible challenge. And I know that together we will get through it. We'll not only stop the spread of this virus, but ultimately we'll get people back to work and get the economy back on its feet, and we will be stronger than ever before when we're on the end of this pandemic.
And Senator, what is your message to the communist Chinese regime and what they've done to this country and the entire world?
The civilized world should view China as a pariah state. The Chinese Communist Party turned what could have been a local health challenge in Wuhan into a global pandemic because of their lies and their corruption. They are still lying today. They are still making it more difficult for nations around the world to control this outbreak in our own borders. So the time has come to fundamentally reassess our relationship with China. That's one reason why I've introduced legislation that would bring pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the United States, why I think so strongly that we shouldn't allow Chinese telecom companies to dominate the world's next generation of wireless communications, and the reasons why it is going to be necessary to fundamentally take stock and reassess our relationship with China at the end of this pandemic, because China has to be held accountable and there must be a reckoning for their behavior.
And finally, what do you say about the leadership of the President of the United States?
Well, the President has really taken charge of this crisis over the last couple of weeks. I think his daily press conferences have been very informative. I think many millions of Americans are learning as they tune in. That may be one reason why so many of the mainstream media networks want to tune out from it. From the very beginning, the most important decision he made was when he decided in late January, contrary to the advice of a lot of his senior aides, and of course the mainstream media and the Democrats, to shut down travel from mainland China to the United States. Joe Biden, in fact, the day that President Trump shut down travel, called it hysterical and xenophobic. So I guess Joe Biden would rather 22,000 people continue to land in the United States from mainland China. So from that very first decision to these recent days, when he's steeled the American people for what he calls the very, very painful days ahead, I commend the president. I know that we've got many tough days ahead of us, as he said, but I, like so many other Americans, are praying for him and praying for all the brave men and women who are working on his task force, or working in hospitals, growing our food, getting it to grocery stores, helping care for our communities. Again, that shows the true spirit of America and why, when this pandemic is behind us, we will be stronger than ever before.
You know, Senator, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, the President of the United States has taken on this issue. No president really has taken on anything like this, different wars and so forth, but this is very, very different. He's filled the gaps where governors were ill-prepared with ventilators, ill-prepared with beds. That's a governor's responsibility. He's used the military and the Army Corps of Engineers wherever he can. He's coordinating with the governors. He's encouraging private business to fill gaps and necessities that are required in hospitals. He's on this every day. He's got this brilliant task force and his vice president in charge of what's taking place there. I have to say, I think he's done an exceptional job, and I'm glad he's there, and I'm glad you're where you are. Thank you, Senator.